All right, let's see those hands. Let's start with Eric Scopel from 247 Sports.
We'll just start with what's it going to be like facing a school you have quite a history with, and just kind of emotionally what's that going to be like being on the opposite sideline this week?
Well, I know this, that being in an Autzen Stadium on this sideline is a little bit easier to call plays, except for when you're on defense. You know, our guys got to do a great job of using hand signals. Our communication's got to be on point. And so, yeah, there's some personal feelings. My wife and I, my family had a great time in Fresno, but this game's not about me. It's about these guys that are playing for us. And we have a mission, and that is to execute everything we do to the best of our ability, regardless of the opponent. And that's how the approach our guys are going to take.
James Krupia, the Oregonian.
Tim, I think offensively, it certainly starts with Ronnie Rivers for them. Just your thoughts on what you've seen from him, not just on Saturday, but going back. Obviously, he's got one of the most prolific careers in that program's history.
Yeah, really impressive young man. Not surprising, you know, he's a legacy of a Bulldog, and he runs, you know, with a lot of heart. He's powerful for a guy who's not real big, got great feet, vision, can jump cut. One of the things I think they're doing a really nice job with him, particularly this year, is getting him out in routes and finding ways to get him touches. And when he gets the ball in his hands in space, look out, he's making the first guy missed almost always. And so we've got to do a great job with pursuit, knowing where he's at, and just knowing that their offense is going to start through him.
Matt Preem, 247 Sports.
It's pretty impressive to see a team, their quarterback throw for over 300 yards in the first half alone. Just the challenges this overall offense had, it seems like they were pretty balanced and spread it around.
Yeah, it's nothing new. I mean, that's what they did last year as well. You know, they're scoring close to 40 points a game and throwing for over 300. You've got a veteran quarterback in Hainer who was recruited at a very high level. In fact, when I was at Cal, we ended up playing against him a couple years back. Very mature in the system. He knows where he wants to go with the ball. When things break down, he does a really nice job of extending the plays and then hurting people with his feet if you don't contain him in the pocket. So he presents multiple challenges in the throw game, and then he also can extend things. So we got to have a plan for that, and we got to be spot on in our zones, in particular, because they're well coached. They're going to flood and drain you out with some things, and we've got to be able to match up.
AJ Jacobson, Rivals. AJ, you there? Let's go to Eric Scopel, 247 Sports.
Coach, with regarding Hainer, just what kind of impresses you most about how he comports himself on the field? It seemed like he was really dialed in there on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a veteran guy that started a bunch of games, and while maybe he doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt, particularly there at Fresno, you can see that he knows the system. They've done a really nice job of teaching it to him. He plays with tremendous poise. You saw him not get flustered. He knows where to go with the ball. Really good in anticipation, and can make the throws they need him to make. So he's been impressive, going back to last year, but I think he even dialed it up a notch on Saturday.
Andrew Martin, KGPE Fresno.
Coach, long time no talk. I know you said that this game is not about you. Kalen DeBoer mentioned earlier today that you guys had crossed paths in 2017. What do you know about him as a person? What do you know about his coaching style and what he's done so far as the head coach at Fresno State?
Well, he's been impressive. He's a guy that came to a camp, I think, when I first met him up in Berkeley, and you could just tell when you meet him, he's got a presence about him. Very, very knowledgeable about the game. Great personality guy, and there's no surprise at all to see the success that he's had there, and I'm sure we'll continue to have. I'm always a fan of Dutch head coaches, and knowing that he's done a nice job there. On one side of me personally, I'm happy for the Bulldogs, but obviously this week it doesn't matter. It's just about the Ducks this week, unfortunately.
James Kripia, Oregonian.
Tim, you're going to be starting a corner who's making their first career start, regardless whether it's Dante or Quez. How much did even just this past week's film maybe talent doesn't translate from UConn. I'm not trying to disparage them, but when you're trying to emphasize things like short tackling and Cropper and Rivers break free, or Jones in the red zone and he undresses the corner as badly as he does. Again, we know about what happened with the technique there, but
Right.
to emphasize when you're making a first start, hey, these are the mistakes that can be made and how not to do them.
Well, what's been great is there's been great competition there between Triquez and Dante. And so they know every single day at practice, they got to be spot on or the other guy's going to get their reps. So that competition is going to continue. You know, when you play these early games against a quote non-Power 5 team, you turn on that tape, they've got Power 5 players. And, you know, you mentioned Cropper. He was wanted by a lot of, you know, Power 5 teams. He chose to stay home and, you know, he jumps out on tape, but so do the rest of the receivers. They've got a really deep group. I think 11 different receivers caught the ball the other day. It's going to be a heck of a challenge. And thankfully, you know, we've had really good competition in our practices getting to go against the career receivers that we have. So hopefully Dante and Triquez will both take that confidence from competing against some, you know, pretty special guys that we have. And so they can feel they can match up.
Dylan Ruben King, Ducks Digest.
Coach, you have a couple guys in the middle and Keon and Popo who are kind of going to be in the middle of that defense that's been shored up by Jordan and Austin for so long. You know, and Fresno State's offensive line kind of struggled a bit last year to protect the quarterback. So what are you looking for from the middle of your defensive line on Saturday?
Well, we need a rush from all of our guys, but I think, you know, Dorlus has got a chance to be a really good player for us. He got nicked up a little in camp, but he's back. Popo certainly has got the ability to do it, but he's got to show. I like where Keon and Christian are. So we've got to have our guys able to roll in, keep them fresh, because they are going to have to, you know, get a good push against these guys. And I think Fresno State, even though a year ago you said they gave up some pressures, this year they look more stout inside. And, you know, certainly last week, you know, when they couldn't get there, they got hurt down the field.
Matt?
They've already played a game, and I guess just how much of an advantage is that for them, and how much of an advantage for you guys to have film on them, whereas they don't have any film on you?
Well, I think, you know, it's an old coaching adage that teams make their most improvement between game 1 and game 2, and certainly we'll anticipate them playing even better than the level that they did last week. You get a chance to have guys who maybe hadn't played together for the first time, and the anxiety that goes into that. You know, we'll still have a bunch of guys that you know hadn't played or maybe hadn't played in front of a full stadium. So, you know, that adrenaline rush, you know, you really can't, you know, replicate that. Guys are just gonna have to go through it, breathe, and be able to play and execute because of the process of our training. You know, to say one's better than the other, I don't know. But there are issues both sides. You know, yes, we do get some confirmation of things that we anticipated because, you know, coaches tend to go back to their schemes of what they do. But they do a lot of things that stress you. They're going to do things with motions to get your eyes away from where they should be. They're going to do things with, you know, having 2-man, 3-man, 4-man surfaces to run game to. So you got to make sure guys fit the gaps properly. And all those things have to come because of the process of your practice. If you get too emotional and you don't go back to, you know, your processes, it's real easy to get emotional and get your eyes in the wrong place. And that's when explosive plays happen.
Eric Scopel, 247 Sports.
Coach, where maybe have you seen this defense grow the most since you arrived in the spring? And how would you just assess that progress overall?
Well, I think physicality wise, this fall camp has been really good for us. I think when you're first learning a defense and you're maybe not sure of yourself, you tend to not play as physical. Your eyes may not be in the right place. You're not playing with the proper technique at times because you're thinking about where I should be. I think our guys are much more comfortable in our package. And so you saw a step up in our physicality, you know, particularly against the run game. And so now I'm hoping that translates to Saturday, but until we, you know, get another opponent to look at it against, that the proof will be in the pudding then.
Andrew.
Coach, want to test your memory for a second here. The last time Fresno State played Oregon was 2012. You were the Bulldogs head coach. Chip Kelly was Oregon's head coach. Derek Carr was a junior. What do you remember about that game and about the environment, the atmosphere?
Well, I remember it being a very, very loud stadium. Unfortunately, I was on the wrong side of that noise that week, and it was difficult to execute against Oregon. They had a heck of a team. I think they had a freshman starting against us that day named Mariota, something like that. And they had a heck of a team. We gave up some early scores, didn't play particularly well right out the start of the game. I thought we battled back, but certainly, that Oregon team was really strong and had the better of us that day. But I think it helped Derek grow up playing in that environment. And then the next week we were able to win against a Pac-12 team at home.
Last question goes to James.
Tim, a real 50,000 foot question here. I was chatting with guys you've worked with during the offseason. I'm sure that got back to you about you're inheriting a defense that on paper has the most talent you've ever had a chance to work with. And that's not speaking ill of anybody. Again, Von Miller was obviously a terrific player, but between KT and Noah and Justin, a lot of blue chip players on this depth chart. Do you feel a degree of pressure to deliver there? And that's part one. And part two is just how you go about managing a room, because just hearing about and managing your own staff and assistants, and even with Nick, that you could correct without being demanding without being demeaning. So just, do you feel the pressure, and how do you go about managing your defensive assistants as well as the players?
Yeah, I think anywhere you go, if you want to, hold yourself to a standard, you're going to feel pressure. Regardless, you look at the talent that we have. I feel pressure every day to challenge those guys, to make sure we're getting the absolute best out of them so that, I can do a service to them. But I don't change the person who I am. I feel pressure everywhere you go to do that. As far as interpersonal workings with the staff, I always want to get input, because this isn't, my defense, it's the Oregon defense. And I think we've got some excellent coaches and teachers on our staff. And I want to hear their input so that we can make the absolute best Oregon defense possible. And, it'll be a work in progress as we go along. And, right now we think we got a great plan, but we've got to be able to adjust to things. And we'll see, as the season goes along, how we tend to adapt. And, if our best guys are playing the fastest, then we're doing the right things.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thanks, Coach.